Alright, so welcome back to the third part of lesson 7. I'm going to comment out this first part up here because we don't need to use it. So what we're going to do is we're going to practice with that double that we talked about. Like, so if you look in your notes, we had string and now we're going to play with double. So right now, I want you guys to pause the video and I want you to put in that first line of code without me. All right, 1, 2, 3, pause. Okay, now you have it in there. It should look like that. Scanner, whatever you named your scanner, equals new scanner, in parentheses, system.in. It's the same every time. All right, so now I'm actually going to rename that KB Reader 3 because we already have KB Reader, KB2, and we'll do 3 here. All right, now I want you guys to pause it again, and I want you to write a line of code that's going to ask the user to enter a decimal. Go ahead and pause. And now that you're back, it should just look something like that. It looks as system out print, enter a decimal here. That's all you need. Now that third line, so we had scanner, we had system out print. Now we need to import their answer from the keyboard. So we're doing a double here. I'm just going to name it D equals KB Reader 3 because that's what we're using. Dot next double. It already pops up with something. Don't forget your semicolon. And then let's go ahead and print out something to prove that we got it. So I'm going to do a system out print line. You enter the number and then concatenate it with whatever they entered. So let's go ahead and run our program and see what happens. Enter a decimal here, 7.9. You entered the number, 7.9. All right, let's get a little fancy with it. So we're going to say enter a decimal, we're going to import it, and then we're going to do a calculation here in the line. So we'll do like D times 8. So we'll change our text because we didn't enter that number anymore. We'll say your number times 8 equals, and then we add D times 8 right there. So go ahead and run it. Enter your decimal. So I'm going to do 6. Mash the keyboard a little bit to get all my numbers in. All right, and it does do a calculation for us. Hooray! So this line just takes in our decimal and then it makes a calculation. So I put that as a remark out here on the side. Hopefully so far this isn't too hard. It's not necessarily easy, but at the same time it's pretty repetitive with the things that we've been doing. So we initiate the scanner, we tell the user what information we want, we import that information, and then we use it. So it's kind of like before, instead of just setting up a variable, we let our user have interaction with our program. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you guys a little trick here with Java, and it's kind of quirky, but that's okay. We already kind of talked about it right here where we imported 2 numbers. So I'm going to do a comment block on this, and then I'm going to come back up to the top. So where we have asks user to enter a string, I'm going to make some space, and I'm going to, this is a new section that we're going to call import 2 strings. So before we had that full name, which was great, it all played on one line, but we're also going to import 2 strings, and you'll be able to see how similar it is to import different things. So we're going to set up our scanner, and we're going to set up what we ask someone to enter. And since we're going to do this again, I'm just going to copy and paste this line. Instead of saying your name, I'm going to say your full name. Okay, so then we also need to use our string because some people's names are strings. So string name equals taquito dot next, open, close parentheses. And we're just using next. We're going to separate it at that space that we talked about earlier. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to copy and paste this line. So once someone enters their full name, we're going to import the first part, first name, and we're going to say your first name is, and then add the name. what we're going to do is, remember before that we imported those two integers and saved them to different things? Now here's something you can do with Java, and we kind of talked about this a little bit back in lesson 4, where you can rename things, but using the same variable. So we're going to say up until that first space, that was your first name, and that's what name is equal to. Now what we're going to say is that name, after we print our first name, the new variable name is going to be equal to taquito dot next open close parentheses. I'm saying that I spelled taquito wrong, and I did. So now what it's saying is that anything that comes after that space and before the next space is the last name. So again, I'm going to copy and paste this. And we're going to change that first to last. Okay, so go ahead, enter your full name, and then it actually prints your first name is and your last name is. Pretty slick. Okay, so like if you have multiple inputs of the same type, like you have, a couple of ints to import, or you have a couple of strings to import, you can separate them with a space. And really you only want to do that if you're going to be, separating them yourself, or you just want them to show up separate. So we have a scanner called new scanner that we named S. Then we say input your school's name, which is Visitation Academy. Then it's going to store that first thing as visitation. It's going to print visitation. And we could change the name, or we could even come in and just rename this visitation again and tell it to print out visitation. Because now it already printed what visitation was up here. The next line it can save in that same spot, and then it prints the new visitation, which would be Academy. So a little confusing, but I think the more you kind of work with it, the easier it'll be for you to understand. Okay, so there is a rule for creating scanners. You do not have to create a new scanner, which is that very first line that we talked about, every time you need to import something. So you can use the same scanner to import a next, next int, next double, and next line. So like if we look at our code, we could have created this very first one for taquito, and we could have used taquito down here for importing one number, taquito for importing two numbers, and it would have worked. There is an exception. Next line cannot follow importing next int or next double. It's weird. You can import strings and you can import numbers in that order, but if you import numbers first, it gets all wonky and it won't let you import next line. So if you have to import a text after a number, you're going to have to create a new scanner object, which is that scanner s equals new scanner system.in. So anytime that you have to take in text after you've taken in a number, you have to create a scanner. It's just how you got to roll. All right, so if you look in your book on page 36, for this lesson you have no questions, but you have two projects. So you have the project Going in Circles, where you are going to input an area, divide it by pi, take the square root of it, and say what the radius is. So you're going to input you're going to ask the person to put in your area, and then you're going to churn out the radius. The other project you're going to do is you're going to import a name, and then you're going to print the full thing. So good luck. Let me know if you have any questions.